This is the 9th video from It Can Happen Here, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to protecting the freedoms guaranteed to Americans by the Bill of Rights. In these videos, we are exploring the claims that Donald Trump, the Republican presidential candidate in 2024, wants to be a fascist dictator. In earlier videos, we have discussed what fascism really means and what the projected Trump dictatorship would probably mean for First Amendment freedoms of speech, religion, and assembly, the Second Amendment right to gun ownership, the Fourth Amendment protections from unreasonable search, seizure of assets and arrest, the Fifth Amendment's protections from self-incrimination, double jeopardy, uncompensated seizure of property and other unfair treatment by the government, and the Sixth Amendment guarantees of a speedy and public trial, an impartial jury, an attorney, and disclosure of charges and witnesses. Today we are discussing the effects of a fascist dictatorship, if any, on the Seventh Amendment right to a jury trial in private lawsuits in federal court, the Eighth Amendment prohibitions of excessive bail and cruel and unusual punishment, and the Ninth Amendment reservation of other rights to the people, even if they are not specified in the Constitution. It seems highly unlikely that a fascist dictator would have any interest in changing or limiting the right to a jury in private lawsuits filed in federal court. He probably also wouldn't want to change the excessive bail or the cruel and unusual punishment prohibitions of the Eighth Amendment. On the other hand, a fascist dictator would want to ensure that the punishments he imposes on his political enemies are upheld by the courts. In Trump's case, he should be comfortable that the conservative majority that he created on the United States Supreme Court will support him no matter what he does. The court's overruling of Roe v. Wade and its recent declaration of broad immunity for Trump and other U.S. presidents, based in part on the historical protections given to royalty under British common law, indicate that the Supreme Court is unlikely to be an impediment to authoritarian rule by Donald Trump. This is a good segue to the Ninth Amendment, sometimes described as an explicit reminder that the people have other rights besides those described in the Bill of Rights or elsewhere in the Constitution. Some have postulated that the individual right to privacy is one of the inalienable rights included in the Declaration of Independence, stated goal of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In 1973, the Supreme Court based its abortion rights decision in Roe v. Wade on a right to privacy derived from the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. Of course, it wasn't until 1989 that the World Wide Web brought the Internet, with its unprecedented and unrelenting invasions of our personal and financial privacy, into our everyday lives. If and to the extent that the 9th and 14th Amendments are deemed to create a constitutional right to privacy, that right would not be supported by a fascist dictator. As noted in our discussion of the Fourth Amendment's protections from unreasonable search, seizure, and arrest, an American fascist dictator would almost certainly use surveillance technology to monitor and track American citizens to enforce loyalty and preserve his power. We're changing things up a bit in our next video, where we will tell you a fictional story about the lives of ordinary Americans under a fascist dictatorship that has withdrawn the personal freedoms of the Bill of Rights. It's meant to be a summary of our prior videos as well as an illustration of just how horrible American fascism would really be. After that, our videos will finally zoom in on the big questions. Does Donald Trump really want to be or plan to be a fascist dictator? If so, could he really pull it off, or are our democratic systems and institutions too strong for him to overcome? And finally, in light of our answers to those first two questions, what should every American do to make sure that fascism does not happen here?